Since the genesis of humanity, we've been telling stories. In the 6th century Greece, a new form of storytelling was created: theater. Stories are a journey, and to continue to provide a space for the journey of theater and a place for Indigenous stories and creators to thrive, the Pimootayowin Creators Circle was created. Let's meet with some playwrights in this year's program to learn more about the creative process and the significance of opportunities for Indigenous storytellers. Let's get into it.
My name is Victoria Perry. I'm a Métis Cree playwright, artist, poet, and lawyer. I live here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and this is my first year being in the Pimootayowin Creators Circle.
Emily, take it away, please.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a Métis actor and playwright, creator. This is my first year part of Pimootayowin as a writer, and last year I got to be a part of it as an actor in 2 of the workshops.
Let's jump right into it. Victoria, Love Louie. Tell me a little bit about your show. Like, what's it about and kind of your process of coming up with this idea?
Yeah, so it's Love Louie. It is a play on the life and trial of Louis Riel. And what this play tries to do is imagine Louis Riel's time going through his days while he was at the time of the formation of the government through to the last battle and his days incarcerated during the trial. And so what I was really trying to do with this piece was imagine Louis in a light that I don't know he's been portrayed in before, which is a soft human perspective, really focused on his poetry. And so in my creative process, I have read a lot of books. I feel like I've consumed so much Louis Riel media in the last year, just really seeing what else is out there. And I also read a lot of his poetry, which I incorporate into my show. So many people, I think, don't know that Louis Riel wrote poetry. And so hopefully they'll have the opportunity to come down next week on the 26th and hear some of Louis Riel's poetry as a part of my show.
That's so cool, like being able to take new aspects of history and implement them into a creative work. Wow, that's really fun. Emily, what can you tell me about your project, as a playwright, kind of creating this creative process?
So I've always been really drawn to like fairy tales, myths, especially modern retellings of them or newfangled fairy tales. So my story, The Shape of Paint Water, is about a mermaid who maybe doesn't look like a mermaid, but she is a mermaid. She's actually maybe what we would call like a reverse mermaid. So instead of like a human top and fish body, she's got a fish head and human legs. And she really wants to explore the human world. The human world is slowly going deeper and deeper underwater, which is, you don't have to worry about your own life if you live underwater, but she wants to become a human. So if she's going to be a human and live in the human world, she needs to figure out how to keep the human world from completely going underwater.
Those sound really exciting. So at least for myself, I'm really excited to see what those look like coming next week. How about we go a little bit about the process and the circle? Like when we're talking before, you mentioned about there's workshops and activities and kind of this creative moment of coming together. Emily, how about you tell me a little bit about just your experiences of being involved, getting together with other creative minds?
Yeah, it's been a really special year. I think our group is full of a lot of people who come from like very different backgrounds, like Victoria with her law career and also being a super talented actor and storyteller. I think is so cool that she brings that in, and other people in the group are of like different ages, have also been like working in storytelling in different media, like in different mediums for many, many years. And so I think coming together like that and learning from a really different group with different experiences have been really special and like helpful to me, and like seeing other people's processes and how they create and sort of like gleaning what I can from that.
What about you, Victoria? What has your experience has been, especially like, you have so many different hats on, like, a teacher, you're an actor, and you also have that law background. Like, how do those kind of all intertwine into your story making process?
That's a great question. I do have a lot of hats that I wear frequently. I change them often. I really think that they all kind of collide. All of the I guess transferable skills you could say that I have gained from all of these different hats really collide in this play. So my legal background, I'm able to articulate the courtroom scene in a way that is fairly accurate to how a scene would go in an actual courtroom. I can imagine what that's like. With my acting background, I can imagine different movements for the characters. I can, when I'm writing the play, I was able to put myself in the character's shoes and imagine how I would perform certain pieces of the show. And that would help me understand what would and what would perhaps not work in the show as I was writing it. The educational background, I think, is going to be evident. It's a play that definitely draws on a lot of history. I think I've made it accessible, but there are some larger concepts in there, historical concepts. The Red River Rebellion, obviously, where there's a focus on a trial. So the formation of the Métis government. So there are some complex concepts presented, and I do hope to do a bit of education on how the Métis Nation was formed and kind of the controversies around Louis Riel's arrest.
I think it's just so interesting how, sometimes when you picture art, you think of a very specific thing, but the cool thing I think about as you expand in art is that taking different backgrounds, you would never think that a lawyer background would be able to apply within creating a play or some sort of artistic process. And I just think that's the cool thing about art, that you can kind of like take different aspects to create something new and something unique.
So I was actually an artist before I was a lawyer, and
So you've come back. So you started artist, became lawyer, now you're back to artist again.
Yeah, I mean, I still practice. So I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I still have an active law practice, but I did start here, and going from the arts to law, I found was there's quite a bit of overlap. You in law, you go to the library and you do your research and you write your submissions and you plan your arguments, and you sometimes submit documents to the court proving your arguments, and then you come to the courtroom and you argue your case, and the judge makes a finding or the jury makes a finding on the outcome of that case. So it's similar to writing a play or building a show, in that you'll go and you'll research your topic, you'll write your play, you'll rehearse your play, and you'll bring it to the stage, except for it's kind of the community who decides if you're successful, not the judge or the jury. Are people coming to see your show is I guess the what does it in theater. So I really think that there's quite a bit of overlap in the preparation and execution of both of these careers, and I which I think is why it's so easy for me to come home to the arts community here.
So how did you two find out about the Creators Circle, and I guess why did you want to get involved, Emily?
So I first found out last year, being asked to be in two of the workshops. I got to be part of Cynthia Wolfe Nolan's new play, Non-Machinable, and Elizabeth Denny's play, Blood Sisters. And that's how I got to first be involved in the festival. And then shortly after, I was asked by Katie German, who's sort of the coordinator for the Creators Circle, if I would like to write in it, which I was I've always wanted to write a play. Most of my background is in performing and a bit of sketch comedy and stuff like that. But the idea of writing a play has been something like, oh yeah, I really want to do that, but I can do that in the future. But to have like the opportunity right then and there, I'm like, okay, if I say yes, then I actually have to do this. So, and I was just really excited because the two plays I got to be a part of last year, I got to play a Métis character in each of them, and that was my first time getting to play a Métis character, which I was really excited about. So I just really wanted to be a part of this group to, like sort of find what it is that I wanted to write about, because I didn't necessarily come into the Creators Circle with an idea of like, this is a play that I want to write. So I sort of tried out a bunch of things along the way and just was working on sort of like flexing that or strengthening that writing muscle before I sort of figured out the direction that I wanted to go in the story that I wanted to tell.
For me, I think it was really instrumental to be sitting around the table with the other playwrights every week. And Emily alluded to this earlier, but we had quite a diverse range of folks in that room. We had, I think, the youngest participant is in her late 20s, I believe, unless you're younger, Emily. But I thought Mary might have been the youngest. You were Mary, I think, at the youngest. And then we go up to Ryan Black and Mike Laurenchuk, like we've got who are veterans in the Canadian Indigenous arts scene in film and television. So just getting to sit around that table with all of that experience and learn from everyone and hear their shows as they got pieced together, because we would do a little bit of writing and we'd come together and read it and critique it, provide feedback, and then we'd go away, maybe revise it or write a new section and do the same thing the following week. And so that process, hearing it and seeing it from these folks in different stages of their career was really interesting.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the importance and significance of places like this for Indigenous creatives and Indigenous stories. We've seen a trend and like a turn in the past couple of years of opening up spaces to Indigenous creators to tell their stories. Little Bird on television, there's a lot of different documentaries and things that explore Indigenous stories. Gimli Film Festival, where they have their Winnipeg Indigenous Filmmakers Collective. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head of more stories. I think there's like a horror film called Blood Quantum that's really fun. So, we're starting to see more places embrace and celebrate Indigenous stories and voices. The Creator Circle here is another example of that. I guess just between the two of you, why is it important to have these places and to continue to build opportunities to bring out these stories?
I think there's definitely like in just sort of like the Canadian theater canon or like theater canon of Western theater, there's a lot of stories told by, like old white guys. And there's definitely, I think theaters are realizing the importance of telling Indigenous stories, but for so long, since there weren't opportunities to foster Indigenous playwriting or Indigenous creatives or Indigenous storytelling, how are you going to put on an Indigenous play if there's not enough to choose from? So I think creating these opportunities that create more Indigenous work by Indigenous creators, I think is really important for like bringing more stories to the stage, but also in representing more of what our country looks like.
I would agree with that, Emily. I'm part of a new organization in Winnipeg called Nishtis Collective, and we are a group of all Indigenous women who are revitalizing works by Indigenous people here and the stories that have been told in Winnipeg for since time immemorial. And so we are we're just emerging, and what is foundational to who we are and how we're moving forward is that more is more, and so we need more. Just because there's one opportunity, that doesn't mean that everyone's going to get into that opportunity. There's only so many seats. We need more opportunities for folks to get involved, because we have such a rich amount of people here in the Indigenous community who are so highly skilled and talented. We have programs like Native Youth Theatre who are bringing up the youth, and they get to this point where they're leaving Native Youth Theatre, and there's not really a next step for them unless they're going into formal education. And so we hope that at Nishtis Collective, in any event, we hope that we're going to be able to put on more Indigenous shows and take those Indigenous artists and give them the roles that they want to play, not necessarily being typecast as so often Indigenous actors are. And that actually goes as well for artists of all people of color who are artists. You had mentioned Little Bird, and Darla Contois, who plays Esther Rosenbaum in the show, I'm happy to say is actually going to be directing the workshop version of my play next week, Love Louie.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I'm thrilled. Darla and I worked together a number of years ago. It might have been 10 years ago. I don't remember, but I haven't seen her in a while, so I'm looking forward to reconnecting.
I think it's just really cool to, like you mentioned, more and more, and continuing to open up spaces, because diversity, embracing diversity, especially here in Canada, like there's so many different cultures and peoples here. And Emily, you said it too, that we need to have more stories that reflect that vibrancy here. And for myself, the more times I get to experience a culture or a story of something that maybe I'm not familiar with, is just a very informative and exciting experience to be like, wow, that's interesting. That's really exciting. I've never thought about that sort of stuff, or I've never seen it from that sort of perspective. So, just to kind of reiterate, the more, the better.
More is more.
So kind of following up in that vein, when we're wanting to grow these stories and grow these circles for more creators, what are some ways that Indigenous people can do to help, in your opinion, and non-Indigenous folks can help to grow those spaces and support these creators?
I think making the space for these creators to create, and ensuring that it's a part of like a theater's mandate or a season, not just in the sense of like, all right, like checking the box, like we've got one play that represents these people in this part of the season, and then one play but sort of in a wish to represent the whole community, and see if the whole community, like, or if a lot of the time Indigenous actors or Indigenous stories weren't represented on stage. So why would, on the whole, people who weren't represented or seen in those stories, why would they want to go to the theater and see stories about people that weren't themselves all the time? So I think encouraging new audiences, and not just audiences who are like seeing themselves on stage, but that appreciation across the board of all audiences coming to see stories that reflect themselves and their families, but also stories that reflect people that have completely different experiences, people that aren't themselves. And I think sort of like growing that audience base. And then I think that sort of like all around cultural appreciation, growing that collectively as a society, I think is huge.
What do you think, Victoria?
Yeah, similarly to Emily, I think folks need to get out and experience art. And Winnipeg is such a city of artists and of all kinds. There's always an amazing band playing somewhere. There's always a really cool cultural festival or celebration happening that welcomes people in. There's always plays happening in the city. And I think getting out there and getting involved, whether it's taking a class, taking in the local art that's happening here, visiting Kalmiyak doing anything that gets you involved in the arts, I think is important, and consuming that art and making your own art and thinking about how you can get involved with the artists in your community to maybe collaborate and make something beautiful together.
Well, Victoria, Emily, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this really, really cool initiative, as well as just, stage play and art as a whole. Just to kind of wrap things up, we'll start with Victoria. Why don't you just give us a quick synopsis of your show and when people can go see it.
People can come down to the Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre's warehouse on Wednesday at 7 p.m. to catch my play, Love Louis, which is a poetic interpretation of Louis's final days along his way to the block.
My play is going to be also at the Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre Tom Hendry Warehouse on Monday, September 25th at 7 p.m. And my story, The Shape of Paint Water, there's a hole in the sky and the human world as we know it is slowly going underwater. And normally this would be totally fine for any sea creature, but this story is about a young mermaid who dreams of becoming a human, but I promise it's not the one that you think. And how is this main character going to fulfill her life's purpose if there's no human world left to save?
Have any stories you'd like us to share, or communities we should highlight? Leave a comment on our social media or reach out to us on our website. I'm Ryan Funk. This was You Talk. And have yourself a good one.